On the morning of February 2nd, 2008, a woman named Rhoda McFarland, 42, secretly called 911 to report an emergency from the back room of a Layne Bryant store in Tinley Park, a small suburb outside Chicago, Illinois. The woman managed to whisper her situation to the dispatcher, but the call was abruptly cut off in less than 20 seconds. It was not until the authorities arrived on the scene that they discovered the gravity of the situation. 5 women had been murdered, 1 was seriously injured, and the killer was on the run. Hello, suspense lovers. Welcome back to Mr. Terror 773. Today, we will learn about the story of one of the most tragic and terrifying unsolved crimes in history, the Layne Bryant Massacre. Layne Bryant is one of the largest and most successful women's apparel retailers in the United States, specializing in plus-size women's apparel. The company has enjoyed tremendous success, with numerous stores across the country and an impeccable reputation. However, on a cold February morning in 2008, one of its many stores was the scene of a tragic and bloody episode that claimed the lives of 5 innocent women. On that Saturday morning, Rhoda McFarland made her way to Brookside Marketplace, an outdoor mall located at 19th and Harlem in Tinley Park, a small, eerie town in Cook County, Illinois. Tinley Park is a small suburb of Chicago with a population of nearly 56,000 and was named the best place to raise a happy family in the United States by Businessweek magazine in 2009. Rhoda, who had worked as a nurse in the Air Force before becoming a missionary with the Embassy Christian Center, had been the manager of the Layne Bryant store in the mall for more than 2 years. She was engaged to be married in a few months when tragedy struck. Rhoda was not scheduled to work that day. However, the store was understaffed, and the only employee scheduled to work that day was a young part-time nurse in her mid-30s. Therefore, Rhoda had no choice but to accompany her that day. Rhoda and her partner opened the store at 10 a.m., as usual, and at first, everything was normal, with no indication that the day would end in such a tragic way. Moments later, a man entered the store, approached the cash register, and began chatting with them. The women thought he was a delivery man at first, but it didn't take Rhoda long to realize something was wrong. After all, she was the manager, and she knew there were no scheduled delivery that day. Her suspicions were not unfounded, for 15 minutes later, before she had a chance to call Layne Bryant stores to report any confusion, the man pulled a gun, a .40 caliber Glock, from his pocket and pointed it at her. It was a robbery. There were 2 more customers in the store at the time, so while pointing the gun at them, he took money from the register and from the customers, collecting about $200. He also took all their jewelry and escorted everyone to the back room of the store. Then, he forced them to lie face down, bound their hands and feet with duct tape, and even made unwanted sexual advances toward one of the hostages. But the assailant did not stop there. Immediately after incapacitating his victims, he went back to the store area, took several items of women's underwear, and placed them over the women's faces in a clumsy attempt to cover their eyes. The assailant continued to guard the women for another 40 minutes, during which time he abducted 2 other victims who had entered the store shortly after he took control of it. One of the hostages even struggled and tried to escape, but once again, the assailant was able to subdue her, punched her hard in the face, and tied her up with the others. By this time, the perpetrator had robbed 6 women of their freedom, and all indications pointed to the man willingly kidnapping anyone else who entered the store until something changed. And unfortunately, something did change. Within 40 minutes of the kidnapping, the perpetrator's attitude had altered abruptly. After initiating his attack with icy coolness and composure, he began to behave erratically and unpredictably. In an attempt to save her life and the lives of the other victims, Rhoda grabbed her cell phone and, using her Bluetooth headset, called 911 to report the emergency. Though she succeeded and the police were immediately notified, their situation deteriorated rapidly after that. In addition to Rhoda McFarland, the gunman had kidnapped 5 other people. Sarah Zafransky, 22, was the youngest of the victims. She was recently married and a graduate of Northern Illinois University with a degree in finance. She had gone shopping for winter work clothes that day. The other victim, Carrie Chuzo, 33, was a social worker with a master's degree from DePaul and Loyola University, Chicago. She had been married for 2 years and was shopping for a reunion with old college friends. Jennifer Bishop, 34, was an ICU nurse at South Bend Memorial Hospital, where she had worked as a shift supervisor for more than 10 years. She had just celebrated her birthday, had 3 children, and was visiting the city with her husband, who was in town for work. The 4th victim was Connie Woolfolk, a 37-year-old mother of 2. Connie did not have much time to herself, especially with the delicate health of one of her sons, who has spina bifida. That Saturday, however, she had plans to meet some old friends at a pizza parlor in Tinley Park. She had gone to the store to buy some clothes for her evening meeting. Although she was the only one of the victims who tried to flee for her life, Connie would never make it to her meeting. When he learned that Rhoda McFarland had called the police, the assailant, who was already showing signs of instability, panicked and executed her with a shot to the forehead. Having crossed that line, there was nothing left holding him back, so he executed each of the victims one by one with a shot to the head. Only one of them, a nursing student and part-time employee of the store, was lucky enough to escape alive. The woman, whose identity was kept secret to protect her from possible attack or retaliation by the killer, moved her head at the last moment, and the bullet only grazed her neck. Fortunately, she pretended to be dead until help arrived. The police responded quickly to the 911 call, and with units nearby, it didn't take long for the scene to fill with officers. Within a minute, an officer stationed at another store in the mall had arrived at the store. But upon entering, he found nothing but 5 warm bodies and 1 traumatized and injured victim. The shooter had escaped. Numerous units arrived on the scene shortly thereafter and began searching every aisle and store on the property. Numerous helicopters were dispatched to scour the area from the air, and teams of divers were even dispatched to search a nearby pond for any possible clues or evidence the killer might have dropped during his escape. But to no avail. The next day, after being released, the survivor gave a description of the assailant. This was used to develop a sketch that would be released 2 weeks later in an attempt to identify the suspect. The man was described as having a thick, stocky build, medium dark skin, between 5'9" and 6'2" tall, and being between 25 and 35 years old. He was wearing a dark-colored jacket and black jeans with what appeared to be a cursive letter G embroidered on one of the back pockets. Authorities used all their resources to track down the suspect. Some 50 detectives were assigned to the case, reviewing all security cameras and investigating more than 200 leads. Dr. David Hathaway, a NASA scientist, was even hired to enhance the security camera footage. Specifically, one shot that showed 2 suspicious vehicles, a dark SUV and a sedan that came and went with the suspect. But even these efforts proved fruitless. The man seemed to have simply disappeared. Although more than 15 years have passed since the time of the murder, and more than 7,000 leads have been investigated to date, the criminal remains at large and on the loose. In 2018, on the 10th anniversary of the tragedy, a computer-generated 3D model of the killer's face was unveiled. The Illinois Police Department has always kept at least one full-time detective on the case, although answers still seem to be a long way off. It is hoped that new DNA technology and other advances will uncover the killer, and, more importantly, that new information will emerge that will lead to him and bring some justice to the families who have waited 15 long years for answers. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the dark underworld of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more captivating tales from history's darkest corners. Until next time, stay curious.